Well, a very warm welcome to another video. I thought it's such a long time since I'd done anything boating related that I would have another look at a couple of favourite boats of mine. It's a long time since I've done one in that series that I keep, as I've said, I keep intending to do these. And the last couple of boats in the Freeman range that I would like to have a look at are the Freeman 24 and the bigger brother or sister of that boat, the Freeman 27. I think these boats are quite interesting for many reasons, but I mean, I've always loved particularly the Freeman 24. I think it's much like the Freeman 23 is a super riverboat. And if you're in the market for a good second-hand quality built riverboat, it's certainly still worth having a look at Freeman 24s. Unfortunately, from my own perspective and the river that I cruised a lot on, it was not always that easy to own a Freeman 24 because Freeman changed these boats quite dramatically. If we go back to 1974, when the Freeman 24 was launched, obviously the Freeman Mark II 22 had been really popular, and the Freeman 23 had been really popular, and they were even doing the narrow beam Freeman 22 Mark II as well at that time. Very rounded lines, very Freeman-esque with the the rounded, half-rounded windows. Nice sort of rounded lines on those boats. You know, the earlier ones, the Freeman 22 Mark II had the split deck, as did the Freeman 26. All very very rounded. Good-looking boat, almost. I often think almost like a little ship. How you might draw, and we come on to 1974, and obviously Freeman thought, this range is getting tired. It wanted, this was the 70s, for all the problems that the 70s brought us, and things had moved on. And in 1974, Freeman launched the Freeman 24. Well, obviously, as all my videos, I'll put some pictures up of these boats and various other bits and pieces that I've got acquired over the years. But I mean, if I hold you this picture up, there is a Freeman 24. I don't know how well you'll see that because the light is on it, so I'll put this up in picture form as well now, or a picture of a Freeman 24, and you can quite clearly see that we have lost those rounded lines, and it's quite angular, and a totally new concept in design for a Freeman. I always thought it was very stylish with the sort of straight more angle windows, and just the whole configuration with the hard top, how the windscreen fold, slope down to the hard top. And to me, it's there again. It's such an iconic boat. I have to say, when it was launched, a lot of loyal Freeman owners that had probably owned, right back to the Mark 1s, the 22 Mark 1s, and then had the 22 Mark 2s, and then perhaps, gone up to a 23, didn't like the lines of the Freeman 24 to start with. A lot of Freeman owners were aghast when they saw the first, Freeman 24 and these very straight, very different lines to what Freeman's had built, previously. But I think it's such a stylish boat, and was very well laid out internally as well. Obviously, I want to keep this video quite short and to the point. I'm not going off on one of my rambles, I hope. So, there is so much one could say about Freeman boats, the whole range. You know, I could sit here all day and still not cover all the ins and outs of it. I think there was about 1,000, roughly 1,000 Freeman 24s built from 1974 onwards till the Freeman factory closed in the autumn of 1983, and Freeman's choosing, they just didn't want to continue the business on. And I think John Freeman by that time had got to retirement age, and none of the family probably wanted to continue the boat building on. I think they could see that times were difficult. It was difficult to sell boats of this quality in any numbers by that time. Things were changing a little bit on the inland waterways. You know, narrow boats, steel narrow boats were getting more popular and, you know, more robust. And, you know, the limited river market, although the Freeman 24 was also built with the, you know, possibilities of a little bit of inshore estuary and sea use as well. So I think Freeman's could see, you know, that it was going to be a difficult time, and so they ceased production in 1983. But say 1,000 Freeman 24s. Later on, in about 1979, until the last ones were produced in the early 80s, they did change them to the Freeman 750 rather than the 24. The 750 being the metre size. It's around about 7.50 metres, I think, and that's where that 750 comes from. My biggest regret with the Freeman 24 is when you're on a waterway, as I was or am, with restricted headroom. The Freeman 24 with the hard top is roughly about 7'6" air draft, as we call it, from the waterline, what you've got, so to clear bridges. On the river I'm on, you're really limited to about 7 foot. So you can see you've got a big problem to start with. Sure, it is possible, and Freeman would have done it for you. You could have had a folding windscreen and a normal cockpit canopy, you know, that folded down, and to get over that problem. But the expense was, you know, astronomical, what that added to the boat. There has been several versions done. In fact, later on, Freeman did build the 750 Sport, which had a folding canopy and didn't have the hard top, and so it would probably be easy to have specified, you know, a folding windscreen or have a folding windscreen made up. I have seen a few Freeman 24s now, particularly on the Norfolk Broads, that do have folding windscreens and soft tops, canopies. So it is not beyond the bounds of possibilities still to do that, but it is going to cost you quite a bit of money to do that. You know, right from the word go, they weren't a cheap boat by any means. And I've got a 1982 price list that I will put up, you know, at this point, and you can pause the video if you want to study that and have a look at what the prices were in 1982. I did go on quite a few new Freeman 24s. I went a few times to the wonderful JGM Meeks showroom where this brochure comes from, down in Marlow on the Thames, and you know, they always had a lovely showroom where they'd probably have a Freeman 24, and also another boat we'll have a quick look at in this is the Freeman 27, which, as I say, was the big brother or sister of the Freeman 24. A super boat was the Freeman 27, and obviously that was really designed for, there again, river use and a little, you know, a certain amount of offshore use, depending on what engines you had fitted and what specification you had. And that was launched in 1978, a few years after. There again, with these wonderful angular, you know, more straighter lines and windows, and brought them really up to date, I think, in that period. There again, had the hard top, and I think this headroom equates to about 7'9" on this one, on the Freeman 27. And so JGM Meeks always had a couple of these boats, brand new, obviously taken from Freeman's, in their showroom, and they had a Freeman 27 and a Freeman 24, and their showroom was a bit like a Rolls-Royce car dealership. You know, it was all, you know, carpet and potted plants and coffee tables and chairs and that kind of thing, if you get my drift. And you know, they're always very willing for you to have a look at these boats. They'd bring you the, you know, the steps on wheels to put up there, and, you know, but one always felt a little bit guilty, you know, looking over these boats, because they were a heck of a lot of money new. I know the last time I went there, and they'd got one of the last Freeman 27s for sale, brand new, and I think the basic price before VAT on that was something like, and I can't remember what engine configuration that had. It's got a single engine. I think it got a smallish single diesel engine, so it was only really, you know, built for the River Thames use, and that was pushing £20,000 by the time you'd paid VAT, and that was in about 1981, 82. You know, a heck of a lot of money. Yeah, that would have still bought you a really nice house. You know, the nearest boat from another manufacturer, really, that, you know, was like the Freeman 27, was the Fairline 29 Mirage, which was a little bit longer, and I think that worked out actually a little bit better value. You know, so very expensive. And as I say, I put a price list up there, and the thing about Freeman's was, and my apologies, my price list is very tatty, but it is, you know, of 1st of January 1982, and at that moment in time, what was a Freeman 24, or they called it a Freeman 750 though in those days, with a single 47 brake horsepower petrol engine. That would be the water motor Sea Tiger. With the VAT, that in total was £14,564. Now, the thing about the Freeman 24 was, it didn't come with that much equipment. You got the boat, the engine, the cushions, the table, and a little 2-burner, you know, a sink and a 2-burner grill in the galley area. But then if you wanted hot and cold, a shower, a fridge, a full Vanessa Calagas cooker, which most people did who were going to use these, you know, as holiday boats, I think that equated, that whole package of the hot water, the fridge, the cooker, that equated to about another roughly £1,700 on top of that with that. So you can see you're pushing, you know, 16, 17,000. And that certainly would have been £17,000 with the single diesel, which more than likely would have been a Perkins 4108 or a BMC diesel, because the basic 750 with a single diesel was £15,410. So, you know, then put your another £1,670 on that, and you've got £17,000. The Freeman 27 with a single petrol was, yeah, I was a little bit out. It was £21,000. That did come with hot and cold water, a fridge, and full cooker as a standard. So you didn't have to buy that package. You know, that was all there ready for you. But there was a whole host of other things, you know, that didn't come with it, that you could, you know, off the Freeman extras list, and it certainly did add up. And, you know, you could have soon spent easily 20,000 on the Freeman 24, and probably 25, 26, 27,000 on a Freeman 27 new in those days. So it's certainly not a cheap boat, and, you know, one had to have a sizable amount of money, or had worked up in boats and, had part exchanged boats and moved up the ladder, as a lot of people did in those days with glass fibre boats. But lovely boats. I rate the Freeman 27 and Freeman 24 in particular really, highly. What should you look out for if you're going to have a look at one second hand? Well, the usual type of old boat things. Windows. Have windows been leaking? They can all be resealed. And have deck fittings been leaking? There again, prominently problem, star crazing. All things like this. And don't be afraid when you're looking at a boat. Don't just stand in a cabin space and fall in love with it, as a lot of people do. Really, open the cupboards, look in all the cupboards, look in the wardrobe, look in the loo compartment, take the cushions off and look underneath those. Does it smell damp? Your nose is as good as tool as anything on a boat. Has there been any signs of water ingress, as I say, from the windows? Because Freemans are built of a GRP with a sponge lining insulation in between, and that can get very soggy and create a lot of problems. Look up the light fittings. Has there been signs of water coming through the light fittings even? And this goes for all the models. The older, Freemans, as well as these newer type Freemans. As I say, so there again, take the back seat off and take the wood up and have a look at the fuel tank and water tank. Look in the build. What's the state like? Really, perhaps not on your first visit, but if you like a boat to go back and have a second look, well, really go for it. And and then of course that's your option if you want to have a survey done on it, and that's something you decide to whether the boat's worth it, or you want that little bit of insurance. But as I say, I speak to so many people, and I say, well, didn't you notice that when you looked at? Well, no, we kind of stood there and just fell in love with the woodwork and the rest of it. Well, you've got to put that at the back of your mind and really sort of dig deep into that boat and have a good look. And even more so, if you can have the boat out of the water and have a look at the hull and check things like is there any movement in the shaft on the cutlass bearing? That's where the propeller comes through the P bracket, and all things like that. The rudder, stock, and you can have a really good look yourself before perhaps you even think about a survey. All old boats have their problems, and Freemans aren't any worse to any other makes. I've seen Freeman, thinking of osmosis, which I've highlighted before in these. I've seen some Freemans with terrible osmosis, and then I've seen a 1957 Mark 122 Freeman with no osmosis. And I've seen all makes and all models with their own, how a boat has been looked after and how it's been used, and so that's something very important. On a visit to a boat, have a really good viewing of it, and as I don't just, as I say, look in every nook and cranny and smell as well. There you go. The story doesn't really end there, because although Freeman ceased business, as I say, or just didn't want to carry on anymore after 1983, I was quite surprised when I went to the 1985 boat show. A company called Val Wyatt's, who are a big marina on the Thames. I'm sure perhaps some of you have known Val Wyatt's. They used to sell an awful lot of Freemans. I used to call it Freeman City down at Wargrave on Thames, because there were so many Freemans. And when I was buying older Freemans, I'd never bought one from there, but I've had a look at several Freemans at Val Wyatt's. Val Wyatt's had do a lot of work, have done a lot of work on Freemans over the years, and knew the models very well. And so it was a bit of a surprise, though, that in 1985, and I don't know who built the mouldings of the hull and superstructure for them. I presume Val Wyatt did the fitting out, or got there again a firm to contract to do that. But the Freeman Finesse was launched. And this was I presume, funded. There again, I'll put this leaflet up in more detail so you can see. 5 Valwart Marine Limited, and I don't know how many of these were sold or how successful it was. Perhaps you know, perhaps if you've got one of these, a Freeman Finesse. I don't think it was in production long. It might have been only been 85 and 86, say. I think there again, it was purely on price, because there again I have the 1985 January the 1st price list, and the standard price of the standard specification Freeman Finesse 24 was, with the VAT, came to £22,971.25. And then you had all the usual extras, like, you know, hot water was £671, a refrigerator was £425, and, you know, there again, that added up to an awful lot of money. So I don't think they necessarily sold a lot. They're still widely available, the Freeman 24s. You know, I've seen them as low as 7,000, dare I say, but they still go up to sort of 14, 15,000, depending on what engine it has, depending what, you know, year it was, depending what extras it has, how it's been looked after. And like the Freeman 27s, they can still command quite a high price depending condition, extras, engines, etc. You know, but a beautiful appointed, you know, if you're looking for a boat, particularly for, say, the River Grey Twos, the Norfolk Broads, and of course the River Thames, what could be better than drifting down the River Thames on a beautiful summer day on a Freeman 24 or Freeman 27? I did touch on the fact that on one of my other videos, some celebrity Freeman owners, well, I believe one of the last boats that the late Ernie Wise of Morecambe and Wise fame, he had a brand new Freeman 27. He had the twin diesel configuration of engines, and that was called Lady Doreen. He named it after his wife, who was Doreen, and a very nice spec boat it was. Although I'm told he'd had, prior to that, he'd had Freemans going back years, into the 60s when he'd had a 22, but in the meantime he'd had a broom boat which he fell in love with and really loved, so he wasn't over enamored with the Freeman 27, but a super boat. The one thing I wish I could do is, having been on a few new models when they used to be in the JGM showroom at Marlow, and I know I've talked about this before, you can't appreciate that lovely smell of a new Freeman boat. I mean, that's sadly something we shall never ever smell again, with the, you know, the wood, the finish that they put on the wood, you know, the new carpets, the new soft furnishings. You know, if you think new cars smell nice, well, a new Freeman was, if I could produce that smell and bottle it, you know, it would be amazing. And of course they also went into a slightly departure. You know, some of the hull colours were slightly different in you know, they were brown and beige, and the superstructure was, you know, a slightly different shade of brown or beige as well. Some of the later ones went back to white GRP, you know, gel coat, but a total different departure, and I admired Freemans for doing that, because, you know, I think, you know, the shall we say, the traditional range of the 23 and 22s had been, you know, so recognisable as Freemans, and had got such a great following, you know, to break that mould and then build this really new angular, really, you know, with it boat for in the mid-70s was quite something. Some people some Freeman 23 owners never really liked the Freeman 24 for whatever reason, and Freeman did keep production of the Freeman 23s going right on, you obviously you had to specify and have it built for you, but they did keep going right. And I think the last one was built right in 78, 79 even. They built have still built Freeman 23s to anybody that wanted one, you know, who didn't like the newer angular lines and the window shape and that hard top and windscreen configuration of the Freeman 24. So there we go. I've rambled on far too long as always, and that's just my another little look at two of the most superest boats that I think were ever built. Sadly, we will never see. There's some super boats built nowadays, you know, for sea use, but these, as I say, these were river boats. I think that's the difference. These were built, you know. And I don't think we shall ever see the likes of that quality of construction and interior finish and ever built again, because it is, you know, I dread to think of what that would cost you nowadays to, if it was, what did I say, £22,000 for that Freeman Finesse that Val Wyatt tried to market. And if anybody knows who built the hull and superstructure for that Freeman Finesse in 1985, I would love to know. I've got an idea, it might have been a firm down on the Broads somewhere, but obviously when Freeman's closed the business in 1983, a lot of the moulds that we used to make these boats were sold off. And it was always said for many years that the Freeman 23 might return. You know, somebody, you know, had got the mould and, you know, was going to probably have a go at producing it, but that never came about. There again, I think it was cost, basically. Go and have a look at some, you know, 24s. And there again, as I've said before, look at as many boats as you can. You know, don't step in, even if you step inside the first boat you go and view and you fall in love with that, make yourself go and have a look at some other boats, even if you go back to that first boat and end up buying it. You know, I think it's always a wise decision. Anyway, without further ado, I must end and say thank you for watching, and hopefully we will be back with some you know, future. It's middle of winter now, it's cold out, it's been a sort of really drizzly weekend, not the sort of weather you can get out and do things at the moment in time, but thank you to everybody that has subscribed, that liked, comments. I really do appreciate it, and please do think about subscribing. It does help us smaller channels, it really does. And love getting your comments. I do try and answer every comment personally, and love getting them. So thank you again. And I'll see you in a future video. And until then, my best wishes and bye for now.